The Omnitrix holds a database for DNA samples of sentient life all across the known universe, from the mighty Tetramans to the genius Galvans to the fearsome Ectoneurites. Amongst all of these alien specimens, one who has particularly fascinated me for as long as I can remember is the DNA sample for the species known as Vulpamancers, Wildmutt. With his inability to speak coherently and his bestial appearance and nature, Wildmutt's intelligence has always been something of a question to me. For the longest time, I just assumed that Vulpamancers were simply the absolute baseline of intelligence required for a species to be allowed within the Omnitrix. But today I've decided to actually put that notion to the test and try my hand at determining how intelligent a Vulpamancer actually is. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. It's hero time! Before we delve too deeply into how smart a Vulpamancer actually is, let's take a brief moment to learn the definition for the words sapient and sentient. To be sentient is to be able to perceive or feel things, and to be sapient is to be able to retain wisdom. Wisdom being knowledge gained through experience or education. We can safely say that Wildmutt is both sapient and sentient, due to his echolocative abilities and through the fact that he doesn't forget who Gwen, Max, Kevin and Rook are while transformed. We also know that Wildmutt does possess an understanding of object permanence, something that is a common indicator of memory-based intelligence in animals. But with all of that being said, how intelligent actually are Vulpamancers? We know that Vulpin is seemingly a technologically advanced planet, though I don't know if there exists any evidence that these structures were actually constructed by Vulpamancers themselves or another species who is native to the planet, such as the Vulpinic Tortigans. From what we've seen of Null Void native Vulpamancers, they don't appear to have any concept of clothing, toolcraft, or construction. But that can perhaps be summed up as their species having no need for such things, rather than them just not knowing the concepts. After all, Vulpamancers don't appear to possess opposable thumbs, which likely limits their capacity for craftsmanship in the first place. To bring up Wildmutt's inability to speak, this isn't an indicator of his intelligence either, so much as it's an indicator of how his vocal cords are structured. Dolphins are intelligent, but they can't speak our language because their vocal cords aren't structured the same way as ours are. Similarly, we've seen Sotorakians like 6-6 are unable to speak coherent English, but they're clearly an intelligent species. Their vocal cords just aren't structured the same way, and therefore they can't produce the same sounds. They do clearly speak a language of their own because Vilgax could understand 6-6. Maybe Vilgax couldn't speak the language himself, but he could still at least learn what noises meant what when it came to 6-6. In the same way, Wildmutt does likely possess his own language, it's just not one that we can understand. He did try to communicate with other Vulpamancers at one point, indicating that it was certainly a possibility that they could speak with one another in their own language. Even if Wildmutt doesn't have a unique language as a Vulpamancer, real animals don't necessarily need a language to communicate either, but rather express information through communication via sounds, such as when dogs whimper or bark to express their emotions. But if Wildmutt can be counted as intelligent enough to be put in the Omnitrix, but a species like the Crabdozer can't, despite having seemingly similar intellect, what makes the Vulpamancers a unique case? Well, I think I may have cracked the code on this one, so please allow me to explain why I think that the reason why Wildmutt is counted as intelligent enough to be put in the Omnitrix is due to his emotional intelligence. In the real world, dogs are able to recognize human emotions based on facial expressions and also through smell. We know for a fact that Wildmutt has an incredible sense of smell, so it could be that perhaps Wildmutt and therefore Vulpamancers in general possess a kind of empathy thanks to their sense of smell. With their advanced echolocation, perhaps Vulpamancers can even hear the heartbeats of other life forms in order to determine their current emotional state, such as whether they're calm or panicked, an ability that would be further aided by their sense of smell, as I just explained. We also saw that Gwen was able to determine what Wildmutt was thinking all the way back in the classic series, so perhaps Vulpamancers express emotional cues just like we humans do, but the way those emotions are expressed is simply hard to recognize for us. What I'm trying to say is perhaps Vulpamancers aren't academically intelligent, but their incredible sense of emotional intelligence and empathy puts them on a level on par with that of truly sapient species like humans. It would make sense for a pack-hunting species like Vulpamancers to have strong emotional intelligence, as it would help them to determine how each member of their pack is feeling and then act accordingly, comforting anyone who is afraid, raising awareness when one is cautious, and so on. For a species with no eyes and an advanced sense of both hearing and smell, the power of empathy would be an invaluable asset to Vulpamancers, and perhaps to such an extent that it puts them on the same pedestal as species like humans, even though they don't share the same level of sentience or intellectual prowess. Essentially, this would mean that the Vulpamancers are less smart than other species in terms of how we understand intelligence, but due to their extreme prowess in an alternate form of intelligence, they are still counted as sapient enough for Azimuth to catalogue them in the Omnitrix. It could also be that Vulpamancers belong to several subspecies, similar to the Merc and Perk Gourmands, as we have seen orange, red and blue Vulpamancers throughout the duration of the franchise, and perhaps the orange Vulpamancers are particularly notable in terms of their emotional intelligence, and thus they are the only subtype able to be in the Omnitrix. Or perhaps these are just different variations in colour for the same species, such as how there exist both red and blue tetramans, and how humans in the real world come in a variety of different skin tones. Regardless, that's all I really have to say with this video, so thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope that one commenter who thought this video was a waste of time is satisfied now. I hope that other commenter who wanted this video is satisfied. And with that, let's move on to our usual post-video antics. First, a big thank you to our Thunder Beasts, Boa310, Riverjoy, Adiana Jones, and Victor Matusik. Thank you guys so much for helping to support the channel. Really love you all. Now, looking at last video's poll, I asked you guys if you preferred stories about superheroes, supervillains, or anti-heroes / vigilantes. With 2k total votes, the results for the poll are on screen now. The winner was anti-hero / vigilante characters, which honestly surprised me. I guess it shouldn't really be a surprise to me considering how popular characters like Batman and Deadpool are, but honestly I just wasn't expecting that result, so... Personally, I'm a really big fan of supervillain characters, but I guess this was kind of a trick question, because I like superhero stories so that I can have a good foil for the villains, if that makes any sense. An example that comes to mind is My Hero Academia, a series that I have some pretty strong opinions about, and a series that my buddy Rubes definitely has some strong opinions about too. Definitely going to be making some videos about all that in the future, but for now anyway, the villains of My Hero Academia are my favourite characters in the story, and I like them so much because they're so sympathetic, and you know why they are the way they are, but at the same time, they're still absolutely bad people who have done terrible things that you can't really justify. I don't know, it's just really cool to see a villain who you can completely understand why they're doing what they're doing, even if it isn't necessarily for a really good cause. I always love characters like that. Best example being Twice, again from My Hero Academia. Really great character, sad he's gone. But anyway, here's the shoutouts for everyone who guessed that my favourite was superhero stories, even though technically I only like those stories most because of the villains who you meet in them. Time Dragon 5492, Nathan T29, and Earthrealm Warrior. Congratulations for guessing which one was my favourite, guys. This video's poll, I'm going to be asking you guys, which colour do you think suits Vulpamancers the best? Orange, red, or blue Vulpamancers? As usual, I'll give a shout out next video to anyone who can correctly guess which one I like the most in the comments. See you next time, fellow heroes. Have a good one.